Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. I was tagged in the not to be read yet tag by Grix, etc. Basically a prompt to talk about a book or books that you are going to read but not yet. Now, he finds himself in a position or has actually chosen to put himself in a position where he is going to be traveling. And he points out that he does not mean going somewhere as a tourist. So he is going to be on the move for the summer, and that will entail reducing the number of books that he can have around him. He will be with a knapsack, I suppose, carrying at most 5 books at a time. And he talked about a whole bunch of books that he does, however, intend to read in good time. Now, in my position, I generally have, I will link his video in the description. In my position, I generally have what I am reading now, and then maybe I have 1 or 2 things in mind to sort of hope to do in the near future. But I have huge piles of possibility and huge things I would like to do, but none of them are things that I can honestly say to myself, well, I am going to read this, but not yet. I will read this within the 10 years. You know, you can speculate and say, well, if I live 10 more years and I read this number of books per year, then I may have this number of books yet to read in my life. Well, I don't do that kind of sort of math because I don't take it beyond day by day. I see no no use in counting on time which I may not have. But that said, I try to be prepared in case I have that time, and so I have some books on my shelf, and I do indeed keep buying books here and there. So this is going to combine somewhat with a book haul video, if you will, and it's a whole bunch of books that I've just gotten. So here's things that have come in, and I'm going to try to do it in the right order. Now, this may not be the right thing to do because 3 of these books are really the same thing, and as soon as you see the first one, you will understand that they are the same thing. But well, here's number 1, and let's hope it's number 1. Sometimes you order 3 of the same thing, and it turns out that you've gotten volume 1 and then you've gotten 2 copies of volume 2. Now this is nicely in a plastic wrapping, and I need to pull it out of that in order to show it to you. It looks like I have done well with this one. So this is the early centuries of Byzantium by John Julius Norwich, I think. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his name. Oh, and this is in absolutely lovely condition. Now this unfortunately sets a high bar because all of these books have been ordered from different vendors. Sorry, kiddo. So that's number 1. Now, if I've done this right, this should be number 2. Yeah, it's always a disappointment when you get one and it's in perfect shape, and then the next one comes and it's in less than perfect shape. Oh, Oh yeah, this is right, and this also looks to be in beautiful shape. And this is volume 2, the apogee, I guess you would say. And lo and behold, a third one has come in. These are all books that I have things slated in the queue that take priority to this. This is not. There's a cat walking right behind the camera there. Yep, there he is. And so it will be, now please don't do that. No. You know, if you draw their attention to something, to some misbehavior, then they want to do it more. Oh my, this is packed in the bubble wrap, but then it's in a box. So that is quite remarkable. That is a good sign, I would say. And whoa. Yes, indeed, that is a good sign. This is the Decline and Fall, and it is also in perfect condition. So I really lucked out. I did not choose all very good. I think one of them might have been very good. Generally, I go for cheap, but in this case, I decided that I wanted, if at all possible, to get 3 volumes with the dust jacket. So I made sure that the separate listings all mentioned something about the dust jacket. So this is what you have. And if this looks familiar to you, booktuber Brian M.R. recently completed these and speaks very highly of them. I will link to his channel. Let me run and grab something real quick just to show you. This is actually, there is an abridged version, which when I met my partner, she had this book on her shelf. So we're talking more than 20 years ago. And at some point, she did a book consolidation, book purge, and got rid of this book and gave it to me. And it's been on my shelf for a long time, and I actually had forgotten about it. So it is another Alfred Knopf book in perfect condition. But hearing Brian M.R. discuss the books, I decided that if I am going to try, I will go for the complete set. So this is what all 4 of them look like. As a rule of thumb, and I take this on high authority, when you read an abridgment, if you want to read an abridgment, if the abridgment has been done by the author himself or herself, is generally pretty good. If it's done by somebody else, then you have to worry about that. That comes from a video by Steve Donahue, and I trust his rule of thumb on that. So, for example, I have Eric Foner's volume on the Reconstruction period. And now the cats are playing with the wrappings. And let's see if I can show you that. Oh, Lord. know if that came through. He's out of it now. And maybe one day I will read it. And in that case, I don't think I want to read the complete thing. I find Reconstruction a hard period to read about, in part because so much of it has to do with President Andrew Johnson, who is really a detestable figure. So this is the last Hall article. You know, I have a couple of other books on Byzantium. At one point, years ago, I all of a sudden was overcome by an obsession to know about Byzantium. And I don't know why, because it came out of nowhere. And I thought, oh, I don't know anything about Byzantium. And so I bought some books, not remembering that the abridgment was so close to hand. And I bought a couple. I could grab those, but why? I probably won't read them at this point. Prior to that, all I knew about Byzantium was the two famous poems by William Butler Yeats. The one being much more famous than the other, I suppose, but both famous poems and both very good poems. So this is, oh, look at this. So this is an introduction to Italian poetry, a dual language book. And this is pretty much what I had hoped. Now, this is a re-buy for me. Years ago, I had, I believe its precursor, which was something about listen, I can't remember. It was listen and not listen and learn, which is what's stuck in my mind right now. But I believe it was essentially the same book, which is, it presents nice bilingual versions of some poems, not really a lot, I think 35 at the most. And the edition that I had came with a cassette tape. And of course, even if I had it now, I would not have the machine to play the cassette tape on. Excuse me. I don't probably need the cassette tape in this case. I can work out the sound well enough, but I had this, and it's a very nice book, and I lent it to a neighbor of mine in my old apartment before I moved, and we fell out of touch, and so both book and cassette tape disappeared from my life. Generally speaking, if you lend a book out, you have to take that as giving the book away, which is fine as well, but just so long as you are aware of what you are doing. Perhaps I will read one of these in a second for you. And now what did I do? And the other book that came up, a mass market paperback, and the spine is not in great shape, but it'll do. It'll definitely do for a read up, and the cover has a little bit of a bend in it, but I can live with that. I had no idea that I was going to be getting a mass market paperback. So where is the no table of, I guess there's no table of contents. And okay. True Grit by Charles Portis. I've seen the movie, the old movie, starring John Wayne when I was young. I don't think it was one of my favorite movies, but I did like it. The main character is, you know, there's the what is it called? The mid-year book freak-out tag going around, which asks about a crush on a character. And I believe that the main character of Maddie, I think it is crush worthy, to be sure. So this book, I'm sure if I had a lick of sense, I would have realized that there was a book that the movie had been based on. I didn't know that. And Charles Portis, I think Library of America now has a volume of some collected stories by this author, but not an author that was on my radar until the Evening Reader. Priscilla, another booktuber whose channel I will put a link to, mentioned this, I think, as possibly a favorite book. And there might be more qualifications to that, but I believe a favorite book. And this doesn't look too bad to get through. So I don't care for the fact that the cover is bent, but you know, it came from Goodwill, $3.99. So I can't have paid too much for it. And this book has the introduction by Donna Tartt, which I thought I wanted. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure who Donna Tartt is. Here it's an afterword, but I've seen in most volumes it seems to have been placed at the front as an introduction. So I'm very pleased with this. Now, this will not be in the far off future, I hope. This will be coming around much sooner than that. Although I could, I suppose, hang on to it for next year's June on the Range, because I will not get to it this year. June is about to leave us. So that is what I have. Oh, I said I might read something to you. And in a video I did recently about Dante, in fact, let me be true to BookTube protocol and put a link to that video also in the description. I mentioned a poem by, well, I mentioned a poet, Cecco Angiolieri, I believe is his name, a contemporary of Dante. And it was in this book that I first found, Cecco Angiolieri. Si fosse fuoco, arderà il mondo. And I showed a book in that video of selected sonnets by the writer. And this poem, which is a wonderful poem, is not translated as nicely in that book. And so that it was looking at that book and thinking about it and glancing through it that made me decide I had to repurchase this just so that I have the translation that I like. I'm surprised I have not read this in a prior video where I was reading poetry. Perhaps I could not find it unless I did read it and it was taken down, but I doubt this. I'm not sure who the translator is in this case, and I'm not sure that they give you the name. No, I can't find it. So this is by Cecco Angiolieri. Si fosse fuoco arderà il mondo. And I'll read it to you in the English translation, which is very nice. If I were fire, I would set the world aflame. If I were wind, I would storm it. If I were water, I would drown it. If I were God, I would send it to the abyss. If I were Pope, then I would be happy, for I would swindle all the Christians. If I were emperor, do you know what I would do? I would chop off heads all around. If I were death, I would go to my father. If I were life, I would flee from him. The same I would do with my mother. If I were Cecco, as I am and I was, I would take the women who are young and lovely and leave the old and ugly for others. I'm tempted to try it in the Italian. Well, let me give it a break. Thank you for stopping by to my channel. if I cut it off here, you'll know that I have aborted the tail end. Si fosse fuoco, arderà il mondo. Si fosse vento, lo tempesterai. Si fosse acqua, il langherai. Si fosse Dio, mandel in profondo. Si fosse Papa, sarei l'or giocondo. Che tutti i cristiani imbrighieri. Si fosse imperator, sa che farai. A tutti mozzarai lo capo a tondo. Well, this is probably old Italian, and I'm way out of practice. That was the octet, now the sestet. Si fosse morte, anderai da mio padre. Si fosse vita, fuggirai da lui. Similmente faria da mi madre. Si fosse cieco, com'io sono e fui. Torrei le donne giovani e leggiadre, e vecchi e laidre, lascerei altrui. So that's the best I could do with that. You know, in that video about Dante, I mentioned Eliot in his video, What Dante Means to Me, talking about practicing his Italian sentences of Dante, which he would memorize late into the night. And it must have sounded terrible. Well, I'm sure this sounded terrible to any Italian reader, but I really needed this poem and this version of this poem back in my life. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much for stopping by.